So this is the short. Because I'm going to need that as soon as you finish this. I need to. Let me get some.
Is this?
Yeah. Good. Okay. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Right, fine. Okay, good evening. Welcome back. So, one of the questions that Achronim discuss, we know that Sukkot is obviously commemorating, at least in some way, the journey that we had through the desert for 40 years. We know that in the Midbar, there were a lot of threes that came together. Pesach's a festival of fours, Sukkot may be a festival of threes. But we had three miracles, three constant miracles each day, which came and which sustained the Jewish people. On the one hand, you had the man, right? Food literally falling from heaven. You had the Be'er providing us with water. And we had the Ananei Kavod, the clouds of glory, smoothing out the journey, protecting them from in front, from behind, from the sides, above, etc. And we know that Chazal tell us the three miracles were connected the three leaders that Bnei Yisrael had in the Midbar. You had Moshe Rabbeinu, the man was in the zchut of Moshe, the Be'er was in the zchut of Miriam, and then Kavod was in the zchut of Aaron. And we see this because when each one of these three leaders dies, or disappears, then at least for a time, these miracles also stop. Right? When after Moshe Rabbeinu dies, Bnei Yisrael go into Eretz Yisrael, there's no more man. When Miriam dies, the Be'er stops, there's no more water, the whole incident of Mei Merivah hitting the rock, etc. We know the consequences of that. And when Aaron dies as well, the clouds disappear, at least for a time. So the question is as follows. We have Sukkot, which is a Chag, which comes along and commemorates at least one of these spoken. I'm not going to go again into the whole machloket, Ananei Kavod of Sukkot Mamash, but Ananei Kavod, the clouds, the protection, the shelter. We have a Chag, we have a festival to celebrate. What about the man and what about the Be'er? Why don't we have a Chag to celebrate these? What is it about the Ananei Kavod that sets them apart? That we have this festival, are we missing other festivals? Why don't they get a mention either? There are some who explain the fact that we have Lechem Mishnah every Shabbat and every Yom Tov. We have Lechem Mishnah, which is a remembrance of the man, the double portion of man which fell on Erev Shabbat. Discussion again in Halakha whether there was there a double portion, was there Lechem Mishnah on Erev Yom Tov or not? But so some say that actually we do have a Chag or Shabbat to commemorate those. But nonetheless, the conventional understanding is it's only the Ananei Kavod. And the question is why? Why does this have a Chag to celebrate? Why do we remember this miracle? What sets it up? In order to answer, we'll ask some more questions, of course. And from a few different places in Tanakh, a few interesting things which come up of different miracles, seemingly insignificant miracles that take place. Give one example. Avraham Avinu. So before he dies, he's told to raise his eyes, to look around. Hashem says, I'm promising you the land of Israel, to you and your descendants. And look around, raise your eyes. It doesn't say look around. It says raise your eyes and you'll see the land. Orach Chaim HaKadosh says that there was a miracle which was done for Avraham Avinu. Listen to this miracle. The miracle was that he could stand and he could look and he could see all four directions, north, south, east, and west, without so much as turning his head. That was the miracle that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for Avraham, that he didn't have to turn his head around, and he could see in all four directions. What's the big deal? That it's going to take a second, half a second, right, to turn his head to see left, right, back, right? Of all the things to do a miracle for, so Avraham's not going to have the tircha. He's not going to have to turn his head around to see the rest of Eretz Yisrael. He's going to see it in one go, panoramic view. That's one example. We find in a number of other places similar sort of things. It says regarding David HaMelech, before he became David HaMelech, he was just David, and he goes and he kills Goliath. You know the story, the famous story with the slingshot, the stone. which hits Goliath in the head, and he falls down and he goes and he kills him. So what happened? Normally, if you were to throw something, throw a projectile at somebody, it's going to knock them over. Which direction do they fall? They're going to fall backwards. Right? I remember a few years ago, there was an advert in South Africa, an advert on TV. I think it was for a financial investment company or something. And you saw there was a person walking through a stairwell, and the person fell, and he would fall and roll over up the stairs, right? Which is impossible. When you fall, you fall down the stairs. Anybody's fallen knows you fall down the stairs. The point of this advert was, because it was something so impossible, it was falling up the stairs, and it was to show that this company was, I don't know, you always go up, you never go down, well, whatever it was. Interesting advert, whether it worked or not, I still remember it. So it says, so when you throw something, somebody would fall backwards. With Goliath, it says he threw the stone and he fell forwards. Why? Explained over there as well, that this was a miracle that was done. Because Goliath was 6 somewhat tall, he was 3 meters tall. And if he had fallen, 6 somewhat this way and 6 somewhat that way, if he had fallen backwards, David would have had to run 12 somewhat to go and reach his head. And this way, he fell forward and he was much closer to him. And that was the miracle, that he fell forwards, now a little bit closer. He didn't have to run, didn't have to exert himself all the way. Okay, and there are numerous other examples of this we find in other places in Tanakh. For example, go back and Sefer Bereshit with Yosef. When Yosef is sold down to Egypt, whether it was whoever it was that sold him, whether the brother sold him or he was taken out of the pit without their knowledge, whatever it may be, the Torah tells us a seemingly superfluous piece of information, that the merchants, the caravan of Ishmaelim that sold him, was carrying spices. And Rashi tells us over there, normally they would carry tar, but this band, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did a miracle, that this band was selling spices, sweet-smelling spices, so that tzaddik, so that Yosef wouldn't have to smell the tar on his journey down to Egypt. Now again, Yosef, who's just been wrenched away from his home, been wrenched away from his father, from his family, from everything that he knows. He's a young man, all alone, being sold into slavery in Egypt. This is the complete, this is terrible. And the miracle that was done, you want a miracle? The miracle should be that he's not going to be sold to Egypt. Miracle should be that he gets saved. The miracle is that on the way down, on the journey, he doesn't have to deal with an unpleasant odor. What is going on? And all of these different examples, we see things which are, again, in some cases more extreme, and there are other examples as well. These seemingly insignificant things, which Chazal laud as great miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for us, for our people, for our ancestors. And perhaps the answer to all of them is the following. This is an explanation which is brought by Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, Rosh Yeshiva of Mir, and he says the following. He says, when you have a parent, right, you want to know whether a parent really loves their child. You would never say, that parent loves their child so much, they give them bread and water. They sustain them, they feed them, they give them everything they have to. Obviously, you're going to provide, the things that you have to, the necessity. He says, but sometimes you can measure the strength of the relationship. You can measure the love not by the necessities, but by the luxuries, by the extra things that you do, by the things that you don't have to do. He says, you see a parent, they give the child the bread and water. Okay, they don't want them to starve, they want them to survive. Every parent would do, because they give them extra, they give them sweets, they give them things. I'm getting into discussion now about the health benefits or not, but it's the luxuries, it's the extra gifts, it's the extra things that they give that they don't necessarily have to. They do that. Why? That is purely as a symbol of love. That's purely out of the strength of the relationship. That's something that shows that I care, that I love, that I have a special bond with this person, and that's something that I want to do. And he says that in all these examples which we've given, each and every one of them, it's an extra something. He calls it a kiss from above, a kiss from heaven. It's not, none of these examples, none of these miracles are things which are significant necessarily in and of themselves. But what they show is somebody going the extra mile for me. What they show is somebody giving me something that they don't necessarily have to give. They show somebody who cares about me, who has that bond, who has that love, who wants to do more than needs to be done. And that's something that I can value, something I can appreciate, something, etc. So tying this back into Sukkot and tying this back into the miracles that we have in the desert, we can understand, and this is brought by the Chidah. He writes it in the name of others as well. But he says, we look at the miracles that we had in the Midbar, the man, which is food, we couldn't survive without food. The Be'er gave us water, we couldn't survive without water. The Ananei Kavod. The fact is, there's an opinion in the Gemara that it wasn't Ananei Kavod. So clearly we could survive without that. That over there is just an extra shelter. That's an extra comfort. That's an extra luxury. That's something that's not just Kivyachol, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to give us the man in the bed. He had to provide us with food and water. Did he have to do extra to provide us with shelter? Not necessarily. That shows something more, that shows something special, that shows something extra sweet. And perhaps it's that extra bond that we are celebrating on Sukkot. And I thought that maybe that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing for us. Maybe there's an idea that we try and reciprocate in the same way. One of the questions that comes up, every Sukkot, people go throughout the days of Chol HaMoed, everybody's looking for Tiolim, but he's looking for places to go. And if you look in the papers and all the Elonei Shabbat and all the things, what's the one thing you'll find in every single advert, right? There's a little box in the corner and says, Sukkah Kshera B'makom. Right? There's a sukkah over there. You're going to come to this place, you can find a sukkah and eat. A couple of years ago, I saw somebody had a particularly creative idea. You may have seen this, where there was an idea where you could open the car, you would open the car door, and there was a piece of schach that could go on top of the door. I don't remember exactly how they did it, but the third wall or whatever it was. But the point is, everybody's looking for a way. You're going out, you're out of your home. How are we going to eat a meal? How are we going to have a sukkah? And according to the strict letter of the law, seemingly, you're out of your home. The mitzvah of sukkah is tishvu ke'en tadur. Right? During the year, you go in a tiyul. Pesach, you go in a tiyul. You don't stop in the middle of the tiyul. Go back home so that you can eat your food. You have your picnic wherever you are. Surely on Sukkot, it would be the same thing, but we're so makbid, we're so particular. And yesterday we said, yes, there are ideas. The Shulchan Aruch says somebody wants to be machmir, even to the extent that achilat arai they would have outside the sukkah, you can do that. Be machmir. But why are we looking to be so machmir, especially when we have this ptor, when we have an exemption? Perhaps maybe it's the idea. The idea is that all of Sukkot is about HaKadosh Baruch Hu showing us that extra love, about HaKadosh Baruch Hu going that extra mile for us. Maybe there's an idea that we too want to reciprocate. And we too on Sukkot, just like Hashem went the extra mile for us, we want to give that back. We want to go above and beyond the letter of the law. We want to give back that extra, that which we can, to show it's not just one way, but it goes in both ways, the beauty and the depth of this relationship. Rabbi Hanania ben Akasha אמר לקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות ישראל לפיכך ובעל המתון מצוות שנאמר דרך חפץ מן צדקו יגדיר תורה וידע.